I have hired, I mean, at least, we're talking at least in the hundreds here. I don't think in the thousands, but I've definitely hired at least over 100 influencers in my time, whether that be through my own brands or on behalf of huge international companies during my time working at various different marketing agencies. I know a thing or two about finding and hiring influencers and just working with influencers in general. And what today's video is going to be all about is my top tips for finding the best influencer for your brand. So if that is of interest to you, then please carry on watching because you're gonna love this video. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jade. I create videos all about social media, entrepreneurship and influencing. And obviously today's one is about the latter. So as I mentioned in my little intro there, just to capture your attention, I have hired loads of influencers in my past. And I'm not gonna lie to you, some of them weren't good hires. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm perfect and every single time it's been a great campaign. They haven't. Some of them have been bad hires. But the benefit of me making mistakes and hiring people and wasting my own money is that I can share some really great tips with you, which is going to help you not make the same mistakes that I have and just really help you pick the best influencers for your campaigns. So before I get into the good stuff, I want to caveat, there is a lot that goes into working with influencers. You have to set objectives, you have to define KPIs, you have to negotiate your rates, you've got to figure out your rights, your contracting, blah, blah, blah. So much stuff goes into it. And I'm working on a bunch of different products, which are going to help anyone who just really needs like a step-by-step for the entire process, right? But I always want to make sure that I do have tips and tricks available for you on this platform for free. I know, I'm so giving. But I always want to make sure that I'm sharing tips and tricks online for free. So that's why I wanted to do this video. It's just basically going to be a few tips what's going to help anyone who's going to work with influencers in the future. So enough of me gabbing, let's get to the good stuff. So the first thing you need to do is to define your objectives. This could be a whole video in itself, so I can't go into too much detail about it, but it does directly link to the influencers that you select. So I feel like I needed to talk about it in, even if it's just brief. So basically when you're setting objectives, you want to make sure they're smart. I'll put a nice acronym here so you know what the acronym means, just in case you didn't know. But you also want to make sure that you're basically starting with the end in mind. What is your end goal here? Usually there are three main goals for when you're working with an influencer. There is gaining awareness to a new audience. So with those type of goals, you need to be looking for influencers who have huge reach, right? So they've got a really big following base. There is gaining credibility. So with those types of campaigns, you really want to work with influencers who have authority within their niche, right? And then the final objective, usually, there's obviously more objectives than these three, but usually another objective is to source content for your channels, in which case you need to look for influencers who have really high quality product photography skills. That's just some examples of how different objectives can require different types of influencers. Okay, so moving on from the objectives, let's talk about how you can actually analyze these different influencers who you're considering working with. One of the first things that I want you to do is to look at their aesthetic. Now, the influencer that you're working with might not have a really obvious aesthetic. Not everyone has like a really cohesive, branding or filtering or color theme, whatever, going through their content. And that's okay. What I want you to still do is have a look at what their content is like. What is their lighting like? Like, what is the vibe that they go through across all of their content? And the reason why I want you to do this is because it needs to align with your brand's aesthetic. Now, you have probably spent huge amounts of time defining your brand, at least I hope you have, defining your brand image, your tone of voice, your personality, like everything about your brand and how you represent yourself. You've spent ages working on that. Now, the influencers that you're working with need to complement that brand. Oh my God, this lighting. I'm so sorry for the lighting, guys. I'm literally going through all 4 seasons today. Like, it is traditional British summer weather. Anyway, the influencer that you select, their content needs to complement your brand aesthetic. I'm not saying it needs to be exactly the same, but it needs to align with it. If your brand aesthetic is really minimalist or it's really moody, right? And that's just kind of the vibe that you go for. You working with someone who's super bright, colorful, all of their content is them at festivals and it's all kaleidoscope type content. Is that even like a good word to describe? But you know the kind of content that I'm referring to. If you are considering working with someone like that, then I really think that you should stop and think, hold on, are we going to complement each other? Like, is this going to even work? Our aesthetics even the same? Also, bear in mind that if you're looking to work with someone whose aesthetic is so drastically different to yours, there's a big chance that their audience isn't going to like your aesthetic or your brand, right? They've acquired that audience because that audience likes their aesthetic. So if their aesthetic is completely polar opposite to yours, that audience probably isn't going to like your aesthetic, in which case you probably shouldn't be working with that influencer. Okay, another tip I can give you is to look at the influencer's content and look out out for previous campaigns that they've done with the brand. Now, I do not believe that you should only work with influencers who have worked with other brands before, because there are a ton of influencers out there who are small or just starting out or just haven't taken that plunge, and they're more than capable of working with brands. So please don't rule out anyone just because they haven't worked with a brand. However, if they have worked with a brand, then it's definitely worth checking out what that content was like. Was the post that they created high quality? Did they create a really great engaging caption, or did they just do a like emoji? You know, did they tag the brand properly? Did they get a lot of engagement on that post? Were there, you know, did they ask a question and did they get loads of people responding to it? All of that stuff, have a look at, because it will just give you a really great idea of what working with that influencer might be like and what the content that they might produce might be like. Now, I will say that if you do find an influencer who you love, but you look at their previous content and you're like, oh, their captions aren't great and blah, 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 you can work with the influencer on that. I just recommend being very upfront when you're in the negotiation phase with this influencer that you are going to look for something slightly different to what they're used to as part of your content deal, right? Because that influencer might turn around and be like, no, I only like doing 2 words in my captions and I'm not willing to change it for you. Fine, just better to get that conversation out of the way in the beginning rather than further down the line. Okay, now I want you to do a really obvious thing that you've probably guessed that I'm going to tell you at some point in this video, and that is to look at their engagement rate. I'll put a link to 1 or 2 different engagement tools in my description, just in case you want to have a look and figure out how you can find out different people's engagement rates. I don't usually do it the manual way. I'm lazy. I just use tools because they just give me the engagement rate for me. So when you're looking at the engagement rate, what you need to bear in mind is that the average engagement rate will vary based on the influencer's niche, based on the size of their account. There isn't just one blanket rule, right? I will give you some guides in this video to help you out though. Now, these guides are based on the account's size, because for me to give you rough engagement rates for every niche, I would need to record like a 4-hour video. So in terms of the account sizes and what kind of engagement rates you should be looking for overall, so if I look down, I'm looking down because I'm looking at my laptop because I haven't memorized all these numbers. I'm sorry to disappoint. I'll try and memorize them next time. If you are working with an influencer who has between 100,000 to 500,000 followers, their engagement rate should be around 2.2%. 50,000 to 100,000 followers, your engagement rate should be around 2.3%. And then 10,000 to 50,000, you're looking at about 3% engagement rate. 5,000 to 10,000, 4% engagement rate. 1,000 to 5,000 followers, 6.8% engagement rate. Under 1,000 followers, you're looking at a 10% plus engagement rate. On average, that's what you're looking at. So use these as guides and don't fall into the trap of working with an influencer who has like 2,000 followers and then who has a 4% engagement rate and then thinking, oh my God, that's great. 4%, you know, what a great engagement rate. I've Googled it and they tell me that you just need a minimum of 3%, right? And then thinking that's really good. I'm not saying it's a terrible engagement rate and you shouldn't work with them, but you need to be aware that it's not the best engagement rate and their audience isn't actually that engaged compared to their account size. Now, if you do find an influencer who has like really amazing content and you really want to work with them, but their engagement rate is just not good and you're thinking, is it even worth it? And the answer is to that question is that it depends. If you really need some content for your website or for your social media channels and this person creates really high quality content, then why not still work with them and base your deal on getting a good, decent bank of content? So you don't even really need to ask them to post it on their channel. Like if you feel like you're not going to get much value from them sharing their content with their audience because their audience isn't very engaged, but you can get value from you obtaining their content and sharing it with your audience, then change your contract terms and actually say, you know what, you don't have to post it on your channel, but I actually want 10 posts rather than 1. And I want the right to distribute it across my website or my social media channels, you know? Think about it that way. Just be fluid. I'm not here to tell you you can't work with that influencer because their engagement rate isn't good. That's not what I'm here to tell you. I'm just here to give you tips to make your partnerships as successful as possible. Another thing that I would like you to look at when you're analysing the different influencers that you might work with is their posting schedule and also how much content they have on their page. So if you find an influencer who you think, oh yeah, great, I want to work with them, and then you actually look at how often they post and they're posting like once every other month, I would caution you as to whether or not you want to work with this person. A couple of reasons. One reason is that it's rare that their audience is going to be fully engaged, or even that their content is seen by all their audience because they're not being consistent and they're not showing up on the gram. But also that is a bit of an indicator that they might be quite difficult to actually work with and actually get content out at a right time on the right day. Because if they're showing that they're not committed to Instagram and they're not kind of consistent with how often they're posting, then who's to say that you working with them and saying, okay, I need 1 post every week for the next 3 weeks, that they're actually going to do it, because they haven't shown that they're going to do it before, you know? So who's to say they're going to do it now? I know it's part of a partnership, so you think, yeah, of course they will, but you'll be surprised. Now, a lot of people, they might not do it. So I don't know. I would just caution you on that one. So the next tip, this is a really good one that I want to give you, is to look out for discrepancies. Did I say that word correctly? Discrepancies. Yes, I did. Look out for discrepancies on their page. Now, this is a really good one. And if I've got any like influencers watching this thinking, oh, I'm going to get some tips and tricks, then well done, smart idea. This would be a really good tip and trick for you, because I coach a lot of influencers and I work with a lot of brands as a consultant. And let me tell you, influencers think they're sneaky and that brands won't pick up on this, but they will, especially now because I'm telling you what the trick is. So by discrepancies, what I mean is looking out for things like if you scroll down their content and content that they were posting 4 months ago was getting an average of 100 likes. And then the content that they're posting now is getting 1,000 plus likes, but their content hasn't actually changed. The quality of their content hasn't changed that much. And I don't know, maybe you've kept an eye on their channel and you're like, they haven't grown that much. Like how are their likes jumping so much? I'll tell you how. Engagement groups or engagement pods or whatever you want to call them. These are basically groups where people enter, and in order to gain engagement on their own channels, they give engagement to other people. So it's not organic or authentic engagement. So it's literally like you'll join this engagement group and you'll have to interact with like, I don't know, 100 posts, right? And then you share your post, and then because you've interacted with all these posts, 100 people will then interact with yours. So if an influencer joins all these engagement groups and spends, I don't know, 5 hours every day liking all these people's content, there's a big chance that they're going to end up getting thousands more likes than they used to get. But if you're savvy from a brand owner's point of view and you can spot those discrepancies, then there's a big chance you can figure out which influencers are using engagement groups and therefore don't work with them. Do not work with any influencers who are using engagement groups. Even if you're not completely sure, you just have a hunch, don't do it. It's not worth it. You have no idea how engaged their audience are. And if they're using engagement groups, you also have no idea what other things they're using. Are their followers genuine? You know, it's just not a trustworthy source or influencer. So avoid that at all costs. Another thing in terms of discrepancy is be really honest with yourself. If you're looking at an influencer's profile and you're thinking, okay, this influencer has 20,000 followers, they're willing to work with me on a gifted basis, and they get thousands of likes per photo. Like, this seems like an obvious done deal for me. Like, what a great opportunity. But their content isn't actually that great. And you're kind of thinking, how have they managed to get this many followers? And how do they get so many likes? Like, it probably feels like a really mean thing to think, or even for me to say, but there are times when I have been working on behalf of brands or for my brands, and I look at people's content and I'm like, your stats are good, but I do not see how these photos are getting so much engagement. And honestly, as I say, I'm like, this is so harsh, but it's true. You can sometimes see when quality of your content isn't that good, and therefore getting that much engagement doesn't seem quite right. And I'm saying to look out for these because that is also another sign of engagement groups or engagement pods, because they haven't earned that engagement organically. They've got it as a result of joining these groups and giving engagement to other people. So it's just something else to look out for. The last tip I want to give you is to check their followers. So this is in relation to what I was saying before in terms of the whole inauthentic engagement and, you know, fake account type stuff. So there are a few different things that you can do to actually manually check people's followers. And there are 2 different things that I want you to look out for when you're looking at their followers. First is what their follower to following ratio is, right? So the reason why I say this is because traditionally, if you have an account who is following 7,000 people and they have 6,999 followers, they are probably engaging in some kind of dodgy growth technique, like the follow on follow method. Like, that's probably what they're doing. That's probably how they've managed to get so many followers. So that's one example of an account which has the wrong kind of ratio and therefore should probably be one that you should avoid. But there's also accounts which might be quite authentic and not be engaging in that follow on follow method, but still have an unbalanced ratio. So they might be following 3,000 people, but they might only have 1,000 followers. And the reason why this is an issue is because there's no evidence of them having a fan base, right? Because those 1,000 followers that they have, they might just be following them because they're following that account, because they're just both following each other. And they might be both following each other because they're friends and family. And don't get me wrong, people can influence their friends and family, of course. But if you are looking to work with an influencer, you are probably looking to work with an influencer who has a bit of a fan base, because that shows that they have a group of people who they can promote to, who are probably going to buy your product. So that's another way that the ratio might not be in balance, and just another thing for you to look out for. And the other thing you need to look at when it comes to their followers is whether or not they have fake followers. Now, I have a whole video which is actually created from another point of view. So it's created from the point of view of people who are wanting to clear out their account and they want to find bots and fake followers and get rid of them, right? Because it's going to help with your engagement rate. So I recommend giving that a watch anyway, because it's going to give you a lot more information and it's going to make it easier for you to identify which accounts are using bots, right? But for the purpose of this video, I'll give you a couple of tips. If you go through an influencer's follower list, you find a lot of accounts which don't have profile photos, which have weird characters in the name. When you click on them, they don't have any content, but they're following loads of people. That's a bot. There's also smarter bots, which are basically just when people pay more for fake followers, which have profile photos. Sometimes they even have like a bio and posts and stuff like that, but sometimes they look really similar. So they're really generic, or if you go on their posts, you will notice that all of their posts are of different people, but they're pretending like it's a personal account, but every single photo features a different person. That's another characteristic of a bot. Or you just have like your standard ones where they've got a profile photo, but when you click on them, they are following loads of people and they have no content. So there's just a few different scenarios of what a bot might look at. But as I said, I recommend checking out that video that I've linked to because it's going to give you more information. Okay, so that is the end of my video. I really hope you found that useful. As I mentioned, there's so much else what goes into finding and working with influencers. But if you're interested to that, then keep on watching my channel. Follow me on Instagram because I'll be releasing new products what are going to help you out in the future. If you're interested in these types of subjects, then I recommend checking out this video. It's all about how you can market your business on Instagram in 2021. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.